Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 36 with Krista Klein. Just a great professional, great person, and she is a recent mother, which is just super awesome. And she's also currently pursuing her doctorate, so she's got a lot going on, but always a pleasure talking with her. She shared a lot of great stuff in this episode. We definitely got into the whole parenthood sort of aspect of life. And while I'm not there, I'm a recent uncle, so it's definitely starting to be on my mind a lot more. Just seeing my brother and his wife going through that, and just my role as a somewhat kind of adult parental sort of figure. But we mentioned a couple of things we'll include in the show notes. But Krista is just so awesome, and I'm glad that I can continue to highlight her and the great work that she's doing. And without further ado, keep an eye out for a message from our new sponsor. And then after that, this will be episode number 36 with Krista Klein. This episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast is brought to you by Top Hat, the teaching app that makes active learning come to life. Top Hat already helps thousands of college professors create their perfect course, both inside and outside the classroom. It's a suite of easy-to-use apps to engage your class, adopt incredible next-generation textbooks, or to run tests within a secure digital environment. Best of all, it integrates with all of the popular LMS systems and doesn't require IT approval to get started. See why professors in over 700 colleges and universities across North America already use Top Hat to power their classrooms. Visit tophat.com/higheredgeek to learn more. That's tophat.com/higheredgeek. Cool. Well, we'll go ahead and dive in here. We will just get things started. If you want to give a quick introduction of who you are and how you got to be where you are today, and then we'll go into pieces of your journey.
Sure. So as you know, I'm Krista Klein. I am currently serving as the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs at the Rutgers University Honors College in New Brunswick. And what that just generally means is I oversee a lot of the day-to-day operations in a small college within the larger Rutgers. And we are going to welcome our first kind of full class of students. So we're going to now have our full 2,000 students in our student body, which is very exciting. So we'll finally have seniors, juniors, sophomores, and first years. So I'll be doing a lot of work. Our building is a residence hall also, so all of our offices are here, and all of the students live in this building in their first year, and then they move out to other places on campus throughout their 4 years. But I'll be working on kind of building traditions, helping to facilitate graduation, and then just kind of all the events and advising that happens outside of the classroom is what I've been able to do now. And I've been doing that for about 3 years. Prior to that, I worked in the Office of Student Involvement and Community Service at Rutgers, where Dustin, you also worked for a little bit. And I had worked there for about 5 years. And prior to that, I got my master's at NYU. I worked at Fordham. I worked at Montclair. So I have kind of in this region, this tri-state area, New York City, I've had a good amount of experiences at different institutions. But as you remember, Rutgers is really my home base, and I went to Rutgers as well. So I've spent a lot of time here and kind of understanding the nuances of a large public research university.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a special place, Rutgers. So it's because I think just the way that it's laid out, and then like during my time there, they're integrating like the medical school, and it's just they really like kind of solidified the kind of State University of New Jersey sort of thing with like Camden and Newark and New Brunswick and medical school and all that kind of stuff. So I guess and we'll get, because I'm very curious about like how you're saying like the Honors College being its own little ecosystem within the greater kind of university community. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before kind of just like going kind of chronologically, we'll go, I guess, back a little bit. So, undergrad Krista, the things that you were doing, in your undergrad college experience, like how are those like formative for you, and like what did they give you personally and or professionally that still kind of resonates with you? Because I know often, it's where people kind of find themselves or find the career of higher ed. So I guess what was that experience looking like for you?
Yeah, so that's definitely true. I had a little bit of a crossroads type of experience where I was a sophomore. I was really involved, particularly interested in new student programs, so orientation, first year experience work. And I was also a journalism major, interested in sports journalism, and I really wanted to actually be a broadcast sports journalist. And I really like golf, which is kind of, I guess, a geek thing that I geek out on now. And I applied for an internship at the United States Golf Association, which is in New Jersey, surprisingly. And I did not get that internship, but basically that same day, my supervisor for my orientation leader position offered me an internship working for new student programs. So it was kind of that crossroads that led me down the higher education path. But what was really formative for me when I was a junior is that Rutgers was undergoing kind of the first major change and catalyst that has now led to what Rutgers looks like now, which was called the transformation of undergraduate education. And essentially, Rutgers had these smaller colleges that then all merged into one larger college called the School of Arts and Sciences. And we had to merge all of these small college orientation programs into one university-wide orientation. So that was my kind of first look into how colleges work and how organizational change happens. And that actually has led me to almost all of the work that I've done since, which is about organizational change, empowering students to engage in the change-making process, engaging stakeholders, kind of finding students who are marginalized and letting them have their voice, letting them understand that they do matter and they can play a role in all of these major change processes at universities. And it's almost led me to what I'm interested in studying in the PhD program, which is related to organizational change. So a lot of it ties together, which is really nice. It's informed me in that obviously I got involved in that more traditional way of leading me to student affairs, but it also kind of gave me this peek into like how a very complex network institution works. And I really enjoyed that experience as a student, and I wanted to continue working in higher ed from that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really cool thread that kind of strings through all that you've done. And I know, you've continued with sort of that mindset, which like you could have gone any route that you chose, or any other person might have gone like a different route, but like with the Honors College doing a lot of that kind of stuff too, which I think is great, because I think that's where kind of the world is right now. A lot of people want to, leave positive impacts in the spaces that they occupy, or, just advocate for, positive progress and everything. But, I mean, that's super unique, because I always just heard about it in hindsight when I was there as a graduate student just for 2 years of like this huge change. And like, there's still, some of the unique parts that make each campus its own, but it's all just the whole networked kind of university, as just Rutgers University. So, that's really neat. And so I guess, if you want to talk more about what you're doing now and kind of the like incorporating like the change making and things that you're doing at the Honors College, and again, just for my curiosity, I guess just like, it's again a very unique kind of ecosystem that you're occupying as like the Rutgers Honors College as its own thing within the university. So, I guess just explore that, and, what do you enjoy most about that current work that you're doing now?
Well, you're totally right. It's very unique and different, especially for this large institution, for us to really feel very small. And for those who aren't as familiar with Rutgers, we actually have a river that separates our campuses. So we have these 5 campuses where students have to take a bus. It's the second largest bus system in New Jersey after New Jersey Transit. And it's very complicated to get students to get answers to questions, to collaborate with colleagues and other staff, because you have to drive sometimes 20 minutes to get to another office. And so for the Honors College, when we started, which we opened in August 2015, we have staff in this building, in this hallway, who are advising team, so academic advisors. We have our budgeting and finance team here. We have an associate dean for research and innovation. We have a student affairs team. We have admissions folks. We have marketing folks. And we're really lucky to be able to collaborate in a unique way that brings the academic and student affairs experience together, which to me is kind of where the learning magic happens, is giving students an opportunity to see what they're learning in the classroom and how they can connect that to their outside the classroom experience. So whereas I know for us who have more of a student affairs focused career, we believe, there's so much learning that takes place outside the classroom. We don't get a chance to interact with faculty as much. And we have faculty who are on staff here. We have faculty who live in our building. So it's given us a unique opportunity at such a large institution to kind of create that smaller feel for staff and for students. So what I think is the most awesome is that opportunity to collaborate and work together. And I wanted to share something that I also know is close to your heart, Dustin, which is that we have a special Honors College event during Rutgers Geek Week, which is a week of events at the university as a whole that kind of focus on subculture and geeking out about things. But because we are an academic unit, I felt really strongly that at the Honors College, we could engage faculty in this work. So for the past 3 years, I'll focus on the first year because I think it was really awesome at the time. My students, I asked them, what is something in pop culture that you're really into that you think is awesome that we could look at through an academic lens? And they all wanted to talk about Star Wars. That was kind of what was reborn around that time. And I read an article in the New York Times that was called The Economic Cost of Destroying the Death Star. And it was awesome. It was written by a professor at the Washington University in St. Louis. And he was an economics professor. We invited him to campus in addition to a Rutgers physics professor and a religion professor from a school in New York. And they all talked about these kind of academic concepts as it related to the Star Wars universe. So we talked about like the physics of building a lightsaber, like how would that really be possible? And with religion, we talked about kind of like religious idols and good versus evil and philosophy in Star Wars. And then, of course, we talked about economics and how destroying the Death Star would really be basically be like a huge blow to the universe. And not only the economic cost, but like the labor cost and the life cost. It was quite fascinating. And then we showed the Force Awakens. We called the event Star Wars: The Knowledge Awakens. So it was really neat to be a part of an environment that could kind of create that event and add that academic component so that students were learning, but they were doing it about something that they really loved.
Yeah. Well, yes, I greatly appreciate that. That was one of my favorite things about being at Rutgers is seeing Geeky Week happen and being able to be like a small part of that when I was there. So, because I know we've had past guests on the podcast talk a lot about just like being able to build community around those like shared interests, but then even just like kind of putting your foot in the door of like those academic concepts that, I think it's a way to help frame them in a way that might be more palatable to, have somebody kind of get their curiosity sparked. And also obviously just like, it's a fun, just a fun event, if nothing else, but, that's really cool. And I think, it's almost like, cause I think that's the ideal that, many campuses I would hope would strive for, like what the Honors College has, that it's just this very tight, kind of tightly coupled unit where, like you said, all of that stuff that should interact and kind of collaborate is, very close together and all that. And it's maybe just because of, a university growing over time or just, people like transitioning and stuff, but like it just becomes a lot more loosely coupled over time. But if, the Honors College was created recently, and if it's like, yes, we want to start from here and try to keep that, kind of keep the group very tight together so that everybody can help each other out or just, make sure everybody's on the same page and all that. But that's all really cool stuff. And I guess, yeah, I guess I don't know if you personally are, a huge Star Wars fan or what, but I mean, I don't know if you've been able to like bring anything else of like your interest into the work that you're doing, but like what are the things that you're really into that you geek out about currently? And if it's like stuff that you've always been into or stuff that you've like recently discovered, but what are those things that are bringing you joy lately?
Yeah, I think it's funny because you actually said sparking students' curiosity, and that's part of the Honors College mission. We have 3 core values, which is curiosity, knowledge, and purpose. And so that Geek Week event really helped us to bring out curiosity in students by using that concrete knowledge. So like they could actually learn concepts, but it sparks their curiosity. So I always geek out on just the work that I do. I know that's kind of lame, but I really do enjoy being able to work with students who are like super excited and passionate about learning and are always challenging and wanting to create change like I talked about earlier. So I'm always kind of looking at ways to better engage students in that change making process, whether it's the hard conversations that are, you may want to change all of these things, but you really can't, or it's let's figure out a way that we can change this and make this work. So that's really a neat thing about work that I geek out about. It's been an interesting journey over the past 6 months. So I have a 6-month-old daughter, Mira, and I typically am like a person that has really been passionate about hobbies and like exploring a lot of interests and being engaged professionally as well. So like looking at myself as a whole person and being a mom now, I find myself just by nature of the role that I'm just geeking out about a lot of mom stuff. So there's a book that's called The Fifth Trimester by Lauren Smith Brody, and it talks about a mom's transition back to work as so let me backtrack because Dustin, you don't have children, you won't be pregnant yourself, so you may not be familiar with these terms, and some of the listeners might not be either. So when you're pregnant, you have 3 trimesters, and then a lot of doctors say that when the baby is born, the first 3 months are like a 4th trimester because it's a newborn that doesn't really know how to function in the outside world. So they're kind of dealing with that transition. So it's almost like a baby is born too early. They need this 4th trimester to get adjusted. And then this woman wrote this book called The Fifth Trimester, which is basically when the working mom is born. So it's after the newborn phase is over. That's about 12 weeks. And that's in the United States. That's typically when women go back to work from maternity leave. So I've been learning a lot and kind of geeking out on what it means to be a working mom and how to kind of learn all the tips and tricks as to how to function on not a lot of sleep. And how to, like, if you're going to be breastfeeding, like pumping in the office, and kind of how to be an authentic mom when you're also working, and how to be authentic with students about that. So I try to really say, like, I'm taking a 20-minute break because I need to, pump breast milk for my child. Like, I feel like it's important to tell students that that's something that if they choose to have children and they choose to work, this is just the reality of the situation. And I don't want to hide that. So I've kind of been geeking out on this idea of like, being a mom, being a working mom, being authentic, and kind of making sure that I'm telling that story. And it's not all sunshine and roses, and I'm not a huge baby person. So like how I've adjusted to that has been a part of my life too. So I just find that I've been kind of geeking out a lot on that.
No, and I think that's really, like, it's really smart, and just having that like awareness, I guess, almost of like, because I think people might have difficulties and then in hindsight try to like, maybe if they're having another kid, they might try to like, tinker and kind of pivot or something. But like you're in the midst of it, and like you have this self-awareness enough to kind of like, okay, let me like try to figure this stuff out, or how to do it in the best way that I can. And like, it's just interesting. And I like that kind of like kind of framework of like the fourth and fifth trimester, and because it kind of like, people just kind of accept like, oh, babies go through trimesters and they're born and all that, but it's like, continuing that thing that people just accept, and is easy, I think, for people to understand because it's very familiar, or kind of familiar enough. So yeah, that's interesting. And I think, it's like good on you for like, taking parenthood and being a mom like seriously enough to be like, let me like read some stuff. Let me like try to, even just for like yourself personally. Cause I know like, cause I think, people will give advice, and I don't know maybe how you like, if it was really just like in your core, like you kind of went on this journey of like reading these kind of books and stuff on your own, or if like people give you advice about it. But I think it's like my mom gave me the advice, which I want to share with the world because it was great, and I really appreciate her authenticity because now she has 2 grown children. Like I'm about to be 30, like we're going to out and about in the world. And she was just like, as you're like, getting married and, having your own kids and building your own family, it's like, don't lose yourself in that. Like she's just kind of now like being able to go on her own journey. So it's that idea of like, okay, like what's going on with me? How can I, make sure I'm in a good place to be a good parent and to continue to be the awesome human that I am, that, has brought a life into this world and is still, working and doing everything else. And so, I mean, I appreciate, because again, it's like, a lot of people say, the typical stuff that you're geeking out about, and it's nice to see patterns and how people kind of take Harry Potter's or, Lord of the Rings or whatever. But like geeking out about being a parent, it's like very unique and very cool. So, I appreciate
you kind of don't have a choice. It's all consuming. So you do have to geek out about it in some way, but your mom's advice is awesome. That is such good advice. I wish someone had told me that earlier. Because that's been really difficult for me. And I think you can be mindful of that if you do decide to have children, and working with Jen, your partner, just because for a mom especially, I think the identity shift, no matter how much you as a partner want to balance those responsibilities and take things off her plate, there are certain things that are just always going to fall on the mom. And my partner, Dan, he's amazing. He does so much for me, but there's still that identity shift. And I still find myself kind of grieving Krista before children, but I have to be mindful that it's not a loss, it's a shift. And so like just keeping that in the back of your mind, that's why I think your mom's advice is so great, she's going to lose, and you're going to lose too, like a part of who Dustin is right now, but you have to think of it as a shift and not as a loss.
And like and I guess if it's like the shift or just sort of like, being put on the bench, it's like they're still there, or like the things that I did, it's like, I can still share that with, a future potential child or whatever, like it's like, it's not as if it's like gone and forgotten and, locked away or something. It's just like, I did stuff and I can like share that with my child, like my interests or things that I enjoyed doing as a kid or something. But it's definitely a shift. And I mean, it's certainly because like, I guess it's, the idea, like you said, it's an all encompassing thing in your life to have a child. But I think some people, again, it's like, if you, it's no shame on them or anything, but it's just like, if you don't have the self-awareness, you might not really try to like, invest in yourself and make sure that you're kind of taking care of yourself in that process, or kind of just like, I don't know, maybe not taking it like seriously enough or something. But I think it's just, everybody comes at it from an angle, and then you might like in hindsight be like, oh, I should have done this or should have done that, like, but it's a beautiful, chaotic mess as life is.
So true.
But well, I guess maybe like if there was any of those like bits of advice, or like just those things that, you're reading and you're kind of plugging into right now, like how are they kind of positively contributing? Like if there was, I don't know, like maybe a moment that, or, just like an anecdote or a quote or something that comes to mind of just like, how has this been meaningful for you in terms of like, really digging into almost like this, I guess for like, like almost like the academic side of like parent, like kind of like zooming out a little bit. And then like, obviously you still have to be a mom day to day, but like, how has that kind of shift for you, specifically been like really positive?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I do love what you just said about like embracing the mess, because I think it's just a mess for a while, and you have to be okay with that. And I think knowing that everything is a stage and a phase, and there's a limited time that you have to deal with certain things. So like first 3 months, you may not really be functioning very well at all as a human being. You might just be taking it minute to minute and very animalistic, like basic needs met. And then for the next 3 months, you're kind of a little better, but maybe you still only shower like once every 4 days. And then, and I like love showering, so it's really difficult for me. And then now that we're now past 6 months, it's like, okay, now I can make it a priority that I'm going to shower every day. I'm going to work out once a week. I'm going to care for myself. Like I actually, I like listening to the Minimalists podcast occasionally, and they always talk about core values. And so after I had the baby, I thought like I need to come up with what my core values are to make sure that I'm addressing at least one of those at all times with the baby. So for me, it's care for myself, care for others, which obviously I'm doing with a baby, so that kind of is irrelevant in this conversation. Making learning a priority, living mindfully, and then making sure that I'm leading the way and role modeling for others. So like doing this podcast, I'm being able to learn something. I'm being able to kind of lead the way and role model and talk about my experiences. I'm taking time for myself to do this. So I have to make sure that everything that I'm doing or saying yes to is addressing one of those things. And if it's not, then it's probably not the best use of my time. So I'm trying to focus on those values, and that taking some time to actually sit down and think about what those are was pretty important for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, their podcast is good. Yeah. I'll cherry pick some episodes every once in a while if it's just kind of like what's on my mind, and they'll talk about a particular topic. But, yeah, I think that's good advice, and because sometimes it helps you to figure out what you should do, and other times it might help you to figure out like what not to do. If it's just like, what, it's not a good use of my time, which is limited to, do X, Y, or Z thing. But then you could also be like, but you know what, it would be great for this other person. It's not as if like you're not doing it so it doesn't happen. It could be like, hey, colleague or friend or whoever, like, would you like to volunteer with this organization? I really can't right now, or it's not, what I should be doing or what. But, well, I guess, with that podcast, with the time that you do have, as you're trying to, I guess, learn more, is there anything that you'd like to just kind of name drop that you're reading, watching, and or listening to that we can include in the show notes?
Sure. So I have limited free time. So when I do have free time, it has to be something awesome that I'm doing. And it also has to be something that my partner can enjoy as well, because we want to spend some time together, but we have to find something that we share that we enjoy. So I feel like I'm not sure if I'm late to the party or like slightly ahead of the party or like in the party of watching Schitt's Creek on Netflix. Great comedy, hysterical. I don't know if you've seen it, Dustin, but it's pretty funny, and I'm now at the point where they're starting to like address some like real issues and social issues. And obviously class is a big topic that comes up, and they're in like a white working class town, and they're from like a high class background. So I look at it from that perspective. And then one of the characters is pansexual. So he doesn't really, he's very open to kind of falling in love in relationships with people of all genders. And so that's been kind of interesting for me. It sounds like you've seen some episodes as well.
Yeah, Jen's watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also really funny, so that helps. And then I'm definitely late to the party on this one, but I love the new Queer Eye on Netflix too. It is unbelievably good. I've cried multiple times while watching it. And again, I find that it hits, not only is it entertaining, but it also is kind of this social justice perspective of having this group of gay men move from Tolerance, which was the original Queer Eye for the straight guy, like about 10 years ago, to this idea of acceptance, inclusion. They talk about white police officers and black men. They talk about they actually make over a gay man who's not out to his family. And I know they have a new season coming out actually this week, I think. And they're talking about, they're working with a trans person. They're working with a woman. So it's really, the things I guess you could say that I'm into are things that kind of that transcend just entertainment. So I'm always trying to find a way to get something out of the experience of what I'm watching and geeking out on.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to look at everything with like a critical lens. And sometimes it's like, it's just kind of check your brain at the door kind of entertainment. And you kind of accept like, okay, it's not going to be the best, but yeah, it's like, I think the best stuff or the stuff I enjoy the most does have like, like it's not completely tone deaf. It's smart. It knows what it's doing. It's advocating for stuff that matters and trying to normalize it. So, and I like that idea of like, these are the things that you are spending your limited amount of time on. So it's like, this is a full endorsement. It's not just like, no, I'm just kind of like into this stuff or whatever. It's like, I'm choosing to watch these shows. And I think both of those are great shows to recommend. And, to just like share with your partner and just kind of unwind and, but still have kind of like an emotional resonance and just that critical point of view. But, so yeah, we'll wrap up the episode here on the optimistic note that I like to end on here. So what are you like some thing or things that you are looking forward to in your job, life, and or the world?
So I love this question. I love that you ask it at the end of the podcast, also to kind of send it off. But I think for me, like I mentioned, my core values, this idea of kind of leading the way and role modeling. I look at myself as a working mom as a role model for others, but particularly for my daughter, for Mira, to show that if she likes work, if she wants to be engaged in the world and, engaging with people and doing things that make a positive impact, then it's a positive thing to be a working mom. I try not to look at it as a deficit of like, I'm not spending time with my child. I try to look at it as a role model. So I'm looking forward to being able to be that role model for her through work, I'm looking forward to eventually one day getting a PhD. It might be in like 5 years, but still looking forward to kind of having that to role model for her and for others. And then just kind of seeing her grow up and evolve into her own person and getting this practice of raising a child who is, in my mind, who I hope will go on to make like a really positive impact, to be a feminist, to be an activist, to do kind of take all this great work that's happening in the world and these movements and kind of take it to the next level. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that all pans out. I don't like to put expectations on her, but I would like to say I have an expectation that she'll like do something good in the world. So I'm kind of looking forward to all of that in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I think that idea of like, even if it's just like, like they don't have to just be like a clone of you that does everything and that whatever. It's like, at least in some aspects, it's like you've been like running with the torch for a while. And it's like, I would hope that they would like run alongside me sometimes, like as we're kind of, sharing interests or sort of causes or something like that. But because my brother just had a child. So it's like being an uncle, that idea of like,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Cause I think, sharing in the same spirit of just like excited to see her grow up and, just be able to be a part of her life. And just like, it definitely clicks in that different idea of like, obviously just like wanting to be around, wanting to be that role model. And, so I think, as I said before, just as we were like talking about doing this podcast, kudos to you for balancing all that you do and, working to be that role model. And, I think, it's cool to see, I think it's only been a couple of months, since, my niece was born too. Like, it's certainly this like gradual kind of taking up this identity and integrating it into your life. And like I said, not looking at it as like a deficit, but just as like, this is who I am. And it's, it's a good thing. It's, it's a kind of a positive thing to be working and contributing to the world and, being able to, share that value with your child. So, awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that you did. And, we'll have everything that we mentioned in this episode in the show notes as usual. And, really appreciate your time. And, I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon. Just have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is a proud member of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices and thoughtful discussions to the higher ed community. Check us out online at connectedu.network or on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.